This is the Chapter 3 Stigma Podcast. This podcast was created to be there for any individual who feels like they are at a low point in life and are confused, seemingly alone, and helpless in their situation. I am a recovering alcoholic, and I felt this way too, until I sat across the table from another addict who shared his story and made me realize that I was not alone in my struggles. My life was saved by this realization, and I hope to help anyone struggling by sharing my story to show you that you are not alone and that life can contain unbelievable riches and meaning. Welcome. I am glad you are here. Hey all, welcome to another episode of the Chapter 3 Stigma Podcast. In today's episode, we're going to wrap up covering Chapter 2 of the big book titled There Is a Solution. So in the last few episodes, we've been going through Chapter 2, and I've just been reading the content from the book as well as overlaying both my interpretation of it, but also my story as it pertained to the topics that the chapter hits on. And today we're going to wrap up Chapter 2 and then jump into finally the namesake of this podcast, Chapter 3. So we'll pick up where we left off from the last episode. So to the book. So many want to stop but cannot. There is a solution. Almost none of us like the self-searching, the leveling of our pride, the confession of shortcomings, which the process requires for its successful consummation. But we saw that it really worked in others, and we had come to believe in the hopelessness and futility of life as we had been living it. When, therefore, we were approached by those in whom the problem had been solved, there was nothing left for us but to pick up the simple kit of spiritual tools laid at our feet. We have found much of heaven, and we have been rocketed into a fourth dimension of existence, of which we had not even dreamed. So I'm going to pause there and just kind of go back and hit on a couple of the items there, just pertaining to the belief and really ultimately just the acceptance of the hopelessness and futility of life, specifically in the manner in which we as alcoholics, I myself had been for 12 years, had been trying to live and manage my own life. And for those who have entered into the road of active recovery and sobriety, whatever you choose to call it, that have found this solution, it truly does revolve around what this paragraph covers next, the spiritual aspect of it. I've said it before, but again, just to highlight, at the end of the day, alcoholism and addiction is a spiritual malady. This is hard to accept. This is extremely difficult for someone who is struggling, especially if they feel like, well, I'm religious, I go to church, it's not working. The next aspect of this paragraph discussing the part about being rocketed into a fourth dimension really hits on the difference between being religious and even disciplined in attending church, doing the rituals, things like that, even talking the talk, and really, I would say connecting with the real spiritual aspect and incredible power of God and adds that higher power. I'll take a moment here to again relay what was the profound mystical experience for me in my story. And truly, these, as silly as this phrasing seems about being rocketed into a fourth dimension, honestly, I get it. just based on what happened with me in my recovery journey. And when I really sit down and reflect and think about it, this turn of phrase here is probably the best way to capture it. It's, other ways I would describe it is just a profound out-of-body experience, a mystical experience, a true connection with God. Is truly just like a portal into another mindset, another dimension. And it truly is one of those things where just our language does not have the right words to fully encapsulate and describe that experience when it happens. And mine came in an extreme way. Again, mine occurred August 8th, right around 8:45 a.m. in the morning, when we were at Lucy's 16-week ultrasound, and the doctor first discovered the concerning growth that she had as she was developing. And it was at that moment when he said to us, "I am seeing something concerning," that the world really dropped out around me. And I had this mystical and spiritual experience that totally transformed and changed my life and changed my recovery journey, and truly has made it such that I have been capable of sustaining myself on the road of recovery through all of the suffering that we faced. And again, that experience, like, to try to play it out, was as soon as the doctor said, "I'm seeing something concerning," the thought that ran through my mind immediately upon hearing that was, "This is what you deserve, Kyle. This is God paying you back for 12 years of lying, for 12 years of isolated struggle with alcohol, for 12 years of dragging your family and friends through hell." And as soon as that thought crossed my mind, I had this just upswell, this surge in energy and unlocking of this perspective, almost to the point where I nearly said, "No, that's not right," out loud. And after that mindset shift, the thoughts that ran through my mind were, God always knew that this little girl was going to be a part of my life, and that she would need me in the best capability that I could possibly muster. And to get there, I needed to have this 12-year struggle with alcoholism. I needed to have the past 86 days of intense humility and just grinding and working on myself to make myself capable of handling what is next. It was a moment where I genuinely feel like God almost got sick of me asking why and wondering about his power and his existence. And in that moment, he took me aside and he said, "Look," and he pulled the curtain back and showed me everything. And then he closed the curtain and said, "It's all part of a plan. Just trust me." That was my moment. That is the moment that changed everything for me. I had been working well in those 86 days leading up to that experience after I had checked into rehab. But from that point on, it was a total shift in perspective. It was a total acceptance of the fact that there is a God, there is a higher power, there is a plan in place for all of us. And as dramatic as my experience is, it's not unique within the world of recovery, and specifically within the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. You'll, in talking with individuals that have had such experiences in the manner that it just totally shifted their recovery journey and made them stop having cravings and just made the alcoholic part of their life drop away in terms of being their only identity, their only focus. When you have conversations with those individuals, you realize that these spiritual experiences happen in all sorts of manners, extreme and mundane. As intense as my experience was, my sponsor had a spiritual experience of a similar magnitude in terms of his mindset and perspective shift as he was doing the dishes. And so you don't have to go through these extreme life events to understand and to get connected with this spiritual aspect that at the end of the day is the solution to alcoholism. It can happen as long as you are honest with yourself, as long as you are open-minded, and as long as you are willing. When those three things are there in your life, you open yourself up to the possibility of a spiritual experience and mystical experience. There's no telling whether it's going to take you a day or whether it's going to take you 10 years to have that spiritual experience, but you have to be honest, open-minded, and willing in order for it to happen. Back to the book. The great fact is just this and nothing less, that we have had deep and effective spiritual experiences which have revolutionized our whole attitude toward life, toward our fellows, and toward God's universe. The central fact of our lives today is the absolute certainty that our Creator has entered into our hearts and lives in a way which is indeed miraculous. He has commenced to accomplish those things for us which we could never do by ourselves. If you are as seriously alcoholic as we were, we believe there is no middle-of-the-road solution. We were in a position where life was becoming impossible, and if we had passed into the region from which there is no return through human aid, we had but two alternatives. One was to go on to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of our intolerable situation as best we could, and the other, to accept spiritual help. This we did because we honestly wanted to, and we were willing to make the effort. So I'm going to take a brief pause there. A lot of this, this section that I just read is, in terms of what I experienced, is highlighted by the story that I shared. But I do want to call out one aspect from these last few paragraphs, and that is with regards to being no middle of the road solution. And I think one risk of the way that's written or communicated to someone that might be hearing this or consuming this content for the first time is thinking that you have to, what that entails is you're going to AA meetings every single day. You're doing nothing but talking about and managing your alcoholism. You just allow the aspects and the practices of living a life in active recovery to totally consume your thoughts and actions. And I actually see that quite differently. What I believe is meant by there being no middle of the road solution is with regards to accepting your alcoholism. And so the way that plays out for me is I truly believe that I am an alcoholic and that I am an alcoholic for life. Introducing alcohol back into my life would just be setting myself on the road towards death, destruction, and mayhem. I fully believe that, and to me, that's what that no middle of the road solution means. There's not even a thought in my mind that, well, maybe if I stick this out for 2 years, then I can start introducing alcohol again. It's not even a question to me. I am Kyle. I am an alcoholic. I am an alcoholic for life. Back to the book. A certain American businessman had ability, good sense, and high character. For years, he had floundered from one sanitarium to another. He had consulted the best-known American psychiatrists. Then he had gone to Europe, placing himself in the care of a celebrated physician, the psychiatrist Dr. Jung, side note, who prescribed for him. Though experience had made him skeptical, he finished his treatment with unusual confidence. His physical and mental condition were unusually good. Above all, he believed he had acquired such a profound knowledge of the inner workings of his mind and its hidden springs that relapse was unthinkable. Nevertheless, he was drunk in a short time. More baffling still, he could give himself no satisfactory explanation for his fall. So he returned to this doctor, whom he admired, and asked him point blank why he could not recover. He wished above all things to regain self-control. He seemed quite rational and well-balanced with respect to other problems, yet he had no control whatever over alcohol. Why was this? Just want to take a quick pause there and cycle back to the aspect around acquiring knowledge as it pertains to addiction, as it pertains to your biology and the thought patterns, habit formation. I obsessed over these aspects of my life for the vast majority of the 12 years that I struggled with alcoholism, thinking that the pursuit of knowledge would unlock how to become a responsible drinker. And for me, it's just not possible. I can acquire all the knowledge in the world about the biochemistry, about the neurobiology and systems, neurochemical systems within my body, how the body reacts when alcohol gets placed into it, how my habit loops and my triggers that create thought patterns that lead to actions, how all of that plays out. And in the end of the day, regardless of how much self-knowledge and self-awareness that I might have with respect to alcohol, that does not mitigate the occurrence of that insanity that ensues from the time that I take the first drink and the obsession over consuming more, and then the injection of lying and attempting to hide it and having to wear a mask so that people didn't know about my struggles. No amount of self-knowledge was ever going to heal that. Back to the book. He begged the doctor to tell him the whole truth, and he got it. In the doctor's judgment, he was utterly hopeless. He could never regain his position in society, and he would have to place himself under lock and key or hire a bodyguard if he expected to live long. That was a great physician's opinion. But this man still lives and is a free man. He does not need a bodyguard, nor is he confined. He can go anywhere on this earth where other free men may go without disaster, provided he remains willing to maintain a certain simple attitude. Some of our alcoholic readers may think they can do without spiritual help. Let us tell you the rest of the conversation our friend had with his doctor. The doctor said, quote, "You have the mind of a chronic alcoholic. I have never seen one single case recover where that state of mind existed to the extent that it does in you." End quote. Our friend felt as though the gates of hell had closed on him with a clang. He said to the doctor, quote, "Is there no exception?" End quote. "Yes," replied the doctor, "there is. Exceptions to cases such as yours have been occurring since early times. Here and there, once in a while, alcoholics have had what are called vital spiritual experiences. To me, these occurrences are phenomena. They appear to be in the nature of huge emotional displacements and rearrangements, ideas, emotions, and attitudes which were once the guiding forces of the lives of these men are suddenly cast to one side, and a completely new set of conceptions and motives begin to dominate them. In fact, I have been trying to produce some such emotional rearrangement within you. With many individuals, the methods which I employed are successful, but I have never been successful with an alcoholic of your description. I'm going to pause one more time there and just talk about, I love the language that's used here about huge emotional displacements and rearrangements. Again, reflecting back to my experience in the ultrasound for Lucy at 16 weeks, this summarizes it perfectly. Like I said, there was that displaced out-of-body experiences that I had, along with one thing I didn't cover was like this really different perspective or like insight. It was almost like I was able to witness and view my thoughts flowing and floating in front of me. And it's almost like I took that first set of thoughts with regards to this is what you deserve, this is your punishment. And I was like literally almost able to destroy them right in front of my face and inject that second thought pattern that I had. And like I said, that second thought pattern, there hasn't been a moment since then where I have felt any shaking of belief in that regard. So again, just the language here really speaks to me with regards to those spiritual and emotional experiences. Back to the book. Upon hearing this, our friend was somewhat relieved, for he reflected that, after all, he was a good church member. This hope, however, was destroyed by the doctors telling him that while his religious convictions were very good, in his case, they did not spell the necessary vital experience. Here was a terrible dilemma in which our friend found himself when he had the extraordinary experience which, as we have already told you, made him a free man. We, in our turn, sought the same escape with all the desperation of drowning men. What seemed at first a flimsy reed has proved to be the loving and powerful hand of God. A new life has been given us, or, if you prefer, a design for living that really works. Going to pause again and just talk about this aspect of the flimsy reed turning out to be the loving, powerful, and I would inject my own language, like foundational hand of God. And I think with regards to my story, that flimsy reed was really me just allowing myself to even be open to the aspect of both God and of the AA program. So as I've detailed in this podcast before, in going into rehab, I discovered after a few days of being in there that really the only aspect of it of rehab that I was pushing back against and not fully buying into was the aspect of there being a higher power, there being a God, and the AA program as a whole. And so I kind of like made a commitment to myself that more or less I was going to act as if it were true and see what happens. And again, I think what that method allowed me to do, going back to that aspect of honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness, I think that allowed me to be open-minded that maybe I was wrong about God. Maybe I was wrong about the solution to alcoholism. And the willing aspect was fundamentally, I felt that I had tried everything. And so there was an aspect to it where it's like, why not give this a try? I think that mindset allowed me in a much clearer way to have this spiritual experience than when I did. Back to the book. The distinguished American psychologist William James, in his book Varieties of Religious Experience, indicates a multitude of ways in which men have discovered God. We have no desire to convince anyone that there is only one way by which faith can be acquired. If what we have learned and felt and seen means anything at all, it means that all of us, whatever our race, creed, or color, are the children of a living Creator with whom we may form a relationship upon simple and understandable terms as soon as we are willing and honest enough to try. Those having religious affiliations will find here nothing disturbing to their beliefs or ceremonies. There is no friction among us over such matters. We think it no concerns of ours what religious bodies our members identify themselves with as individuals. This should be an entirely personal affair, which each one decides for himself in the light of past associations or his present choice. Not all of us join religious bodies, but most of us favor such memberships. I'm going to pause here and just highlight, again, one of my, or I guess the way I approach God and any conversations I really have about spirituality or about God. My relationship with him is mine, and it is extremely personal. And quite frankly, I don't care what your relationship with God or your higher power looks like. Specifically, if you are kind of following, standard morals, not doing harm unto others, I really don't care. I have too many problems of my own, and I have too many problems as an individual to be concerned about how others believe in that regard. And so this is one aspect of AA that I really do want to highlight. It is extremely funny now that I'm in AA, or what I would call in AA. That's another aspect. There's really no in or out. It's like the loosest, worst cult I have probably ever experienced or been a part of. And yet it takes a significant amount of flack for being a cult. Now, can you find bad AA groups? Yes, of course. There's a spectrum for everything. But as a national, actually international organization, it is profound. It's almost a case study in just a self-sustaining, self-organizing group and membership. You can leave whenever you want. And truly, there is no judgment about how anyone else perceives or pursues their recovery. All right, back to the book. And I promise, almost done. In the following chapter, there appears an explanation of alcoholism. As we understand it, then a chapter addressed to the agnostic. Many who once were in this class are now among our members. Surprisingly enough, we find such convictions no great obstacle to a spiritual experience. Further on, clear-cut directions are given showing how we recovered. These are followed by 42 personal experiences. Each individual in the personal stories describes in his own language and from his own point of view the way he established his relationship with God. Kyle's note, quick injection, should probably be his or hers in the back of the book. The last few hundred pages, many of the stories are women. Good old, I guess, 1930s writing for you there. Back to the book. These give a fair cross-section of our membership and a clear-cut idea of what has actually happened in their lives. We hope no one will consider these self-revealing accounts in bad taste. Our hope is that many alcoholic men and women, desperately in need, will see these pages, and we believe that it is only by fully disclosing ourselves and our problems that they will be persuaded to say, yes, I am one of them too. I must have this thing. And the last statement, the last sentence of that chapter is truly, again, one of the reasons that I'm doing this Chapter 3 Stigma podcast and project newsletter and just talking about my story and my struggles. I want to help anyone out there that is struggling, suffering, battling alone, thinking that there is no solution for them, to realize that others have walked this path before you, and that if you are willing as an individual to do the work, that there is a solution. That's all I've got. Thank you. Love to you all. If you enjoyed this podcast, share it with others or give us a rating on your channel of choice. My hope is that my story can help others in their struggles with addiction or any other aspects of life that they feel could be bettered. You can follow us on social media at Chapter 3 Stigma on Instagram and YouTube. I cannot solve your problems for you, but I can listen. If you want to reach out with a message through one of those channels, I will respond and let you know that you are not alone. All the best, you are loved, and life is worth every struggle and bit of suffering you have to endure. Until next time,